spotted. Leading an enforcer squad. Take them out. Enforcer's down. Pursue the target.
There are moments when all of Mirror's Edge Catalyst's components fall into place, moments when intricate level design allow the fluid freerunning to shine, or the mission at hand delivers a memorable set piece. Between those moments, there's a disappointing amount of filler and several mechanics, most notably the combat, that trip up the experience, but these stumbling blocks aren't enough to completely derail the magic of those instances where everything goes right. Much of that magic stems from the game's signature mechanic, parkour. Unlike most first-person action games, Catalyst emphasizes movement and momentum over guns and fisticuffs. Protagonist Faith Connor's moveset consists of vaults, rolls, wall runs, and more, all of which demand some degree of skill. Split-second timing can determine the fluidity of an animation, and successfully chaining successive moves over great distances requires serious dexterity. Skill-based traversal is not only cool conceptually, it's satisfying in practice, thanks to responsive controls, naturalistic animations, and the variety of movement options at your disposal. Even little touches like your controller vibrating right before the impact after a long drop help make movement even more exhilarating than it was in the original game. The flip side of this coin, however, is the clunky, cumbersome combat. Faith relies entirely on her feet and fists when taking down enemies, so the game encourages you to pair your attacks with her movement skills for maximum impact. When it works, it's awesome. Wall running into a flying kick or sliding into an enemy's knees and watching his helmet slam into the ground is super gratifying. Problem is, many environments are too open to foster this form of kinetic combat, leaving you to clumsily dodge around enemies and slowly chip away their health instead. Because the enemy AI is bizarrely predictable, I generally just spammed whatever cheap move I found most effective against that specific enemy type. Thankfully, I could often avoid combat altogether, though more than once I was locked in a relatively sparse arena and forced to defeat a preset number of enemies. Given the game's focus on movement over fighting, these moments, though rare, were totally unnecessary. The upgrade system is another low point for Catalyst. Some essential maneuvers that should simply be available from the start, like the quick turn and tactical roll, must be unlocked, and other abilities can't be upgraded until you've progressed far enough into the campaign. This practice of artificially gating upgrades feels forced and pointless, though thankfully the progression system ultimately has little impact on the moment-to-moment gameplay. Other important aspects end up feeling a bit more mixed, though most ultimately add more than they detract. The open world structure, for example, results in quite a bit of empty commuting down familiar paths as you run from mission to mission, at least until you unlock more safe houses for fast travel. Outside of the campaign, however, the world becomes an enticing playground full of collectibles to uncover and races to run. Several of the side missions end up feeling just as substantial as the story missions, but even just figuring out how to scale a building for no reason can be rewarding in its own right. You can also craft and publish your own time trial events by dropping markers in the environment. It's a simple yet ingenious system, and a serious boon for the game's longevity. As for the campaign, some missions feel routine and unimaginative, sending you on simple errands to areas you've already seen, but others deliver truly pulse-pounding tension or thoughtful environmental puzzle solving. You'll zipline from the tops of buildings, dive over security lasers, and escape from more than one collapsing construction site. Later levels up the difficulty by adding more enemies rather than crafting more elaborate environments to test your parkour skills, and while that's damn disappointing, the campaign still provided several welcome challenges and unforgettable moments. The story stringing it all together is unremarkable but also unobtrusive. It disappointingly squanders the intriguing near-future dystopian premise by focusing on a half-baked corporate conspiracy filled with predictable twists and paper-thin characters, but the dialogue cringe factor is low and the narrative lends a discernible arc to the action. It does exactly enough to move the game along without leaving a lasting impression, positive or negative.
What is that?
Art, Faith. Art.
Yeah? Could have fooled me.
Funny. Did you just come here to crush my self-esteem, or are you up for some actual work?
Finally, it's worth noting many of the technical shortcomings that plagued the beta have been remedied. The frame rate dipped once or twice, and I experienced a small handful of glitches, like multiple audio cues playing simultaneously, but load times were completely reasonable, and none of the technical hiccups I experienced actually impacted the gameplay. Catalyst may not be the best-looking game out there, but it runs well enough to keep you invested in the gameplay. And really, that's what matters. I was often underwhelmed by the visuals, the story, the combat, but I was also consistently wowed by the movement and everything that came with it. And for that reason, I can't wait to keep playing.